What do you associate with summer? Is it a warm beach, a cold drink, fireworks, vacations, catching some waves, maybe something else entirely? For many of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's by far one of the most exciting and the happiest time of year. That's why I knew I had to capture some of that summertime magic and make this season's installment of the Art Redesign Challenge the best it could be. For those new to the channel, this is a mainstay series where I ask my viewers on Discord to come up with their best Fakemon, so long as it's themed with what they associate with the given season. This time around, I asked you guys specifically to come up with Fakemon that serve as direct evolutions to pre-existing Pokemon, be it a split evolution to a more popular Pokemon that takes its own twist, or one that rises from obscurity with an evolution that it more than deserves after many years. Wow, did you deliver with what I believe was truly the strongest batch ever. I couldn't be more proud to lend my renditions of 11 of these submissions, taking into account my own art style and lending some critiques for improvement where I saw fit to these strong concepts. Unlike other seasons, I also wanted to take this a step further and celebrate your concepts by including detailed evolution methods, shinies, and even unique moves and abilities for each and every submission, some of which you gave me ideas for directly. While my art style isn't the Pokemon one, I believe I've once again been able to create a strong, visually cohesive batch of Pokemon in my own style that all celebrate a common theme, summer, and it's all thanks to your help. Without further ado, let's celebrate the season and dive into our first submission. But first, let me briefly tell you that this video is sponsored by me. That's right, for the past few months, the Tam Valley crew has been hard at work, relaunching the Creator Spring Storefront, where you can rep the channel's emblem and colors in a variety of styles. I personally picked up the gray tee and the baseball hat for myself, and I can really attest to the shirt being super soft and comfy. We also have beanies for when the weather gets a bit colder, and designs from a variety of moments across channel history, like this regional variant of Aerodactyl I made a while ago. From now until the end of August, you can use the code EARLYBIRD for up to $5 off shipping for any store product. And with that shameless plug out of the way, let's actually get to the Fakemon. Alright, kicking things off, Skunky Spinda gave us Beatrode, this very fun evolution to Voltorb. I always like to kick off these videos with Pokemon that I believe are textbook staples for the season, and a beach ball in a warm beach is excellent, and a necessary inclusion to any summer collection. I love the friendly personality compared to Electrode, and how creative the concept is despite how simple it is. I mean, there's nothing saying Voltorb couldn't transfer its consciousness to another type of spherical object if it does in fact inhabit real-life Pokeballs. So why wouldn't it develop an affinity for these popular beach toys during the summer season? For my redesign, I had little new to offer besides a mischievous but friendly expression, and perhaps a bit more shading to augment its spherical shape and plastic texture that reflects shiny in the sun. In warm-weathered regions, Voltorb that are allowed to roam on beaches somehow inhabit beach balls, ditching the encasings that make them foul-tempered and explosive. This evolved form, known as Beatrode, is exceptionally carefree and passive compared to the average Pokemon. Beatrode hardly move on their own, instead blowing in the wind across the soft sands of beach resorts, allowing tourists, passerbys, and even children to pick them up and play with them. Their rubbery bodies are incredibly lightweight and resilient, deflecting most attacks with ease as they bounce off of them. If their beach ball encasings happen to pop, Beatrode somehow use the wind to reinflate quickly. How they do this is unknown. In lieu of one shiny form, this Pokemon would boast not one but 3 alternate forms, each one inspired by various Pokemon Game Box versions over the course of the franchise's history. See if you can identify which one is which in the comments below. Lastly, to denote this Pokemon's love for drifting on the sands, Beatrode would evolve from Voltorb when leveled up on a beach or in a sandstorm. Let's stay on this summer sports theme for a little bit longer and venture into the tides to find Surfurr, this cleverly named evolution of Girder from Mega Rayquaza. Instead of playing with concrete, this Pokemon returns to its wooden plank roots and fashions itself a nice board to catch some waves on. I love the creative, subtle ways this Pokemon conveys its newfound water typing, such as a scaly bottom half almost like a bodysuit, and kelp as Surfurr hair, which is genius. My redesign was overall pretty simple, my main goal being beefing up the physique of this Pokemon to make it clear that it's a third stage Pokemon, minus the bulging veins of course. giving some motion to the kelp hair and pose to show how it's actively surfing, and fixing up that surfboard with cracks, lines, and asymmetry to make it clear that it's just like Timber's log or Conkeldur's pillar. This is a handcrafted item from the wild. It's not a real man-made surfboard. Overall, a very fun design to work on. This Pokemon evolves from a girder who has found a new passion for riding the waves. It works tirelessly on the plank of driftwood that it finds, and it shapes into a functional surfboard. It prefers to live a less strenuous lifestyle compared to its predecessors, causing its once bulging veins to recede. However, it is still quite strong, a necessary trait to fight against the choppy waves on windy days. The average Surfurr is altruistic and will stop smaller Pokemon on the beach from being bullied, but Surfurr can also be image-obsessed and showboat its skills to any audience that it finds. It is believed Surfurr's other adaptations, its webbed feet and fin tail, sprouted from sheer willpower to leap into action when it first spotted a good wave. For this Pokemon's shiny form, I changed the kelp hair from a dark green coloration to a more light green seaweed look, and its scaly lower bodysuit and tail went from green to also lighter green. Of course, the board as an object stays the same, otherwise emphasizing the seaweed all the way around. Surfurr would also boast a signature move of its own, Surfing Smash. This move is a bit similar to Fighting Press, which I believe we need plenty more of. It would deal water-type damage to all opponents on the field, similar to Surf. But for the opponent that it targets, it would deal water fighting damage. For a double battle, this would be hugely useful, and I imagine the animation would be pretty fun as well. In addition, how about a signature ability? Here's Wave Rider, an ability in which the Pokemon draws in all water-type moves. Instead of taking damage from them, its speed stat is boosted. Finally, to reference this Pokemon's love for Hanging 10, Girder would evolve into Surfurr when leveled up while surfing on water and holding its signature crude board item, which I imagine would be the board itself, some kind of driftwood that you could find on various beaches across the Pokemon world. How about taking a break from the waves and enjoying a nice summer snack on the beach? Luckily, we got just the submission for that, Sundainty, courtesy of the Puff. Almost looking like a regional form or a convergent species to Alchemy, this is a direct evolution to Milcery that clearly references an ice-cold sundae. A very adorable inclusion of food elements in a foodmon that doesn't go too far over the top. My redesign is largely focused on making this feel a bit more differentiated from Alchemy, to justify it as a split evolution rather than a regional form. I did that by changing up the body type to be a bit more circular to look like the balls of melting ice cream, keeping only one sharp element in the head, which is the cone crown, and 2 wafer sticks to look like hairpins keeping the hair together, which is of course made of nice drizzling chocolate fudge. I also added some sprinkles in the hair and cookie crumbles in the body, just for some contrasting textures. If you're going to make a food-based Pokemon, especially a humanoid one, why not go all out? Also, as a small detail, Alchemy struck me the first time I saw it as one of the only major Pokemon not to have predominantly black line art. Instead, a lighter shade of its body color, to reduce contrast between segments of whipped cream and limbs. So I did the same with Sundainty to mimic that style, which is pretty unconventional for both my art and official Pokemon art. A common sight on beach boardwalks, Sundainty enjoys the company of others, but prefers to remain out of the spotlight due to their chill and secluded personalities. They are a pleasant addition to any summerside shop or cafe, due to the sweet aroma that they emit, alongside a perpetually cool breeze due to their icy cold bodies. In their natural state, their bodies remain soft and susceptible to melting, so they typically prefer to lounge and socialize under a nice umbrella. However, when stressed or in the heat of a fierce battle, these Pokemon can harden their bodies to pure ice crystal. The sprinkle-like gems on its body and head are made of this material and constantly replenish in the event that they are knocked off during battle or used to damage the foe. For the shiny, it was a pretty simple color swap of just the vanilla ice cream body to a pleasing minty shade, to reference mint ice cream of course, with all the other elements staying the same, except now a white chocolate drizzle on the head rather than chocolate or fudge. You'll notice that every shiny in this video is either a direct reference to their pre-evolution, evolutionary counterpart, or even better, an attempt to reference some kind of alternate concept that reinforces the Pokemon's base concept, rather than random colors like green or pink, since I think the franchise, as cool as they are sometimes, should largely move away from that. Finally, to reference this Pokemon's chilly exterior compared to Alchemy, and the preparation method behind a delicious ice cream, Milcery would evolve into Sundainty when spun while holding an ice stone. However, not all parts of summer are positive. Too much fun on the sands can leave you with a pretty nasty sunburn. So this next design is quite fitting. This is Giganomalis from Shieldless Pixels. This is an evolution of Duosion meant to represent sun overexposure, which can result in deadly diseases such as skin cancer. I always love a tastefully dark Pokemon, and this is a very creative concept to create an original Pokemon without making it all too different from its evolutionary counterparts. For my redesign, I had two goals. One, bring some color into the design. I opted for a sickly shade of green for the cellular structure, with individual components being purple and dark green to show their toxic nature. Metaphorically, of course. That's due to the second challenge, which is the fact that these cells are just rapidly dividing. That's how cancer works. I love that the artist showed that this Pokemon is decaying in terms of health by having it literally decay in one arm, but I wanted to emphasize the abnormal growth instead, like a tumor, paradoxically making this Pokemon almost beefier and more detailed than Reuniclus, since it has an uncontrolled growth mass and has since spurted extra limbs and random cells appearing in its body, which causes it pain. Was this accomplished tastefully, and does it look enough like an original Pokemon rather than a regional form? You let me know. But I personally think this is one of the strongest concepts and one of my strongest redesigns in this whole challenge. Duosion, whose fragile cell structures are exposed to damaging sunlight, can undergo rapid cell division, and lose control over the process as they evolve into this Pokemon. Giganomalis are known for their ever-expanding size, even when new limbs are lopped off. This Pokemon tends to be more stressed due to this lack of control, and can tend to be more hostile than Reuniclus, even though it's unknown whether they experience more pain or not. The structure that holds them together is extremely toxic to the touch for both Pokemon and people. Giganomalis most commonly attacks by shooting off blobs of this mass to foes, which can even corrode metal when potent enough. For the shiny, I opted for a warm-hued version based around the color red, both to look like a gross fleshy tumor, but also to reference the sun exposure and the sunburn that was the root cause of this Pokemon's evolution, and thus the unfortunate mutation. To represent this origin, Duosion would evolve into Giganomalis when leveled up at half health or below in harsh sunlight. Next, let's turn to our first amphibious Pokemon as we head off the beach, the adorable Slowplash from Davilo XD. This is a third member of the Slowpoke family, ostensibly based on mermaids. I find it super interesting that this Pokemon was given the Shelder shell as its mermaid scales, now adorned with multicolored gemstones to showcase this Pokemon's regal nature. While I commend the artist for this more feminine face, I do think it's a charming trope of all Slowpoke iterations to retain the cartoonishly simple face, so I wanted to work within that framework for my redesign, alongside playing up some draconic elements like fangs and different ear shapes to denote the dragon typing that the artist gave this Pokemon. I also simplified the gemstones to just be blue crystals or pearls, while bringing back more pronounced spikes in these spots to give some more life to the Shelder shell. For the most adventurous of Slowpoke that yearn for the open seas, getting bitten by Shelder may induce this rare evolution. These Pokemon are exceptionally strong swimmers, braving against the open currents and diving to tremendous depths in the open ocean. They collect the rarest treasures from the seafloor, including pearls, discarded shells, coral, and minerals, and use them to adorn their shells. It's said that these items are responsible for its newfound draconic power, which they use to defend themselves, underwater with brutal force if needed. Whipping up harsh undersea currents and emitting an enchanting song in the deep sea, they can draw enemy Pokemon to the murky depths. For 1 month out of the year in late summer, they return to the shore to raise their young. They build nests on the beach in both remote areas and near resort towns, and they are surprisingly sociable with other Pokemon and even children, offering to help build sandcastles or splash in the water for fun. For the shiny, I wanted to pay homage to Slowbro's shiny with yet another purple-hued form, one that I think brings out the dragon typing nicely, since that's a color typically associated with dragons more so than the saturated pink of the Slowpoke family. Lastly, to show this Pokemon's regal status surpassing even Slowking, it would evolve from Slowpoke when leveled up, while a Pearl, King's Rock, and Soft Sand are in the bag at the same time. Now it's time to fully dive under the waves and discover some aquatic Pokemon. This submission comes to us from Ninja Umbreon96, known as Subaleen, and is based on submarines, evoking the memory of summer vacation in coastal or oceanic destinations. I completely agree with how much this one feels like summer, despite being a pretty simple alternate evolution for Wailmer. Really, my redesign was just focused on giving this Pokemon a more clearly defined separation from Wailord. My line of thought was that, well, Wailord is quite large and circular, known for being extremely light and floaty, So for Subaleen, I opted for a much more sleek, streamlined, and dense design. Wailord is balloon-like, so this one is much more like those sinking torpedo pool toys, if you know what I'm talking about. I also based this Pokemon on smaller whale breeds, alongside the wide face and the mouth of a whale shark, which I think works great for the body shape, which of course I wanted to make sure looked like a submarine first and foremost, with these darker colors, metallic ridges, and porthole-like spots on its body and dorsal fin. Exceptionally strong swimmers, Subaleen have the deepest recorded dive of any known Pokemon. Their compact, metallic bodies and ability to filter air to increase or decrease their density allows them to surge downwards to incredible depths, scavenging for prey on the seafloor and roosting in undersea caverns. They have the ability to echolocate with extreme precision, navigating complex environments and even sparring effectively against Delmise, Huntail, or other deep-sea enemies in complete darkness. Their sturdy bodies withstand hits, scratches, and deep-sea pressure, with a thick blubber that rapidly regrows and has a durability compact to the metal hull of submarines. Though Subaleen are incredibly elusive due to their range, habitat, and lifestyle, they are nonetheless useful research subjects for scientists, since their anatomy can provide a useful guide for mitigating human-made submarine implosions, and a small number of Subaleen with trackers have recently been identified as a vital tool for geomapping the abyssal ruins and other uncharted parts of the eastern Hoenn Sea. To reinforce this Pokemon's water and steel type, I made its shiny a sleek, matted, dark steel color, like a stealthy military submarine. It's a nice contrast from the very fun and bright purple Wailord shiny, and it also makes Subaleen almost look like an orca whale, which is another nice reference to another kind of whale. Finally, to reference this Pokemon's submarine origins, Wailmer evolves into Subaleen when leveled up while diving at or beyond level 40. What about a Pokemon further towards the surface of the water? Here's Florineon from Jock, in alternate evolution for Finneon. Apparently this Pokemon is based on firefighters, hence the name inspiration coming from Saint Florian, the patron saint of firefighters. This Pokemon also cleverly references the tropical archerfish, which are capable of shooting small jets of water from their mouths, just like the hose of a firefighter. For my redesign, I chose to keep the general shape of this Pokemon, which is meant to be a general hybrid between a dolphin, marlin, and flying fish, while discarding the elements too similar to Lumineon like the heart bow on the top of the head, cause I don't think that added too much. I also chose to play around with the colors to overtly make this Pokemon look like a firefighter, with a nice uniformly gray body, like Lumineon or half of Finneon, and bands of gold like the reflective details of a firefighter's uniform. And how about a bubble goggle set? I could totally see this Pokemon whipping around at high speeds in shallow and coastal waters. Residents of coastal towns can peacefully rest, knowing that nearby Florineon are primed to put out fires, both big and small. These Pokemon are sleek and speedy, skimming to the surface of the water in warm coastal areas. They race to fight danger with extraordinary response times, filling their bodies with water and shooting it to douse fires fearlessly. The jets of water that they spit can extinguish nearly any flame, and they are hailed as heroes of these communities. They are large enough and strong enough to put children or small Pokemon on their backs as needed in rescue situations. As they travel between locations where they're needed the most, these Pokemon enjoy putting on extravagant shows of their athleticism, leaping into the air and diving, performing complex maneuvers, and choreographed spectacles as they travel in pods of 3 to 5, like a coordinated fire rescue team. For the shiny, I made a variant that sports the same reflective gold bands, but a more red rather than navy body, to reference the varied uniforms worn by firefighting brigades and fire itself. This Pokemon would also sport a signature ability, Dousing. While perhaps a tad overpowered at the artist's own admission, this ability would automatically fire a weak water move upon any fire Pokemon that gets switched into battle. Finally, to reference this Pokemon's passion and skill for the art of extinguishing blazes, Finneon would evolve into Florineon when leveled up by defeating a Fire-type Pokemon at or beyond level 25. Next, we get a Pokemon that fits both the summer skies and lush plant life. Here comes Cherymph from the Potato. This Fakemon boasts rich origins from Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruits, nymphs, and sour cherries. I mean, this Fakemon is inspired by sour cherries, not that Pomona is the goddess of sour cherries. A unique blend of inspirations that work well together, in my opinion, since it seems to be a trope that we get some kind of feminine grass-type Pokemon in a lot of generations. So kudos for creating such a realistic Pokemon that I would definitely enjoy in some kind of Mediterranean region. For my redesign, I just took note of the special fact that the artist specified that this is an evolution to Cherymph, not Cherubi, so I made sure to iterate a bit more to make sure that this is a proper third stage. That meant adding more pronounced limbs so it looks more fairy or nymph-like, and also making sure the proportions were correct, making the eyes bigger and head bigger to get that cute factor and signature look of the Cherubi line, and adding some shine on those cherries to highlight their role as the laurel worn by this nymph, made of real fruit. I absolutely love how this one came out, especially the triad of colors in red, gold, and green. Very cute and endearing while still being sophisticated and beautiful. It feels like a very timeless Pokemon design that could totally exist in nearly any region. Cherymph that live in sunny Mediterranean climates take on this new evolution. In certain regions, this Pokemon is commonly seen as an embodiment of summer itself, due to this cultural status and ability to grow and protect crops even in scorching heat. Across rolling hills, vineyards, and flower fields, flyovers of Cherymph flocks are revered by farmers and berry growers, as the pixie dust from their lush wings that descends upon plant life allows it to grow at much faster rates than normal. This is possible due to their wings' abilities to absorb solar energy as it flies. Since helping others is viewed as their life goal by Cherymph themselves, they are happiest in the company of others, and they will gladly join a trainer's team to boost the joy, morale, and vitality of the party. For Cherymph's shiny, I paid homage to the Sakura inspirations of Cherymph, and its colors with some nice peachy pink and lighter gold, almost like this is a spring version of this Pokemon. Finally, to reference this fantastical fairy-like Pokemon, Cherymph would evolve into Cherymph when using a shiny stone. Now, what about a clear summer sky? I'm sure many of us have memories of relaxing on a warm summer evening under the stars. So here's Mightior from Dolphin Dance 10. This evolution to Mightior always has the shields down ability, as it seems to be pure starlight energy burst from the core into many pieces. I like the idea here, with each limb being disconnected, really highlighting the flying nature of this Pokemon, but I think some work could be done to improve the face a bit more, to be more clear and have a more defined personality, rather than just two floating bug eyes. So that's exactly what I did. I also gave it some more subtle nods to aliens, by increasing the size of its head points, and its eyes are not spirals anymore. Now they look like a pair of shades to show this Pokemon's fun-loving nature, and a reference of course to the sun, which it's bright. I also didn't include any shell elements, just like the artist didn't, showing how this Pokemon did indeed burst out of its shell upon evolution, now powerful enough to survive in the vacuum of space without it. On the clearest of summer nights, flocks of Mightior can be seen dotting the sky as they race through the upper atmosphere. Now fully emerged from their shells, these Pokemon have full control over their flight and cosmic powers. They are incredibly bright, and can be often mistaken for shooting stars. These Pokemon consume space dust to brighten their cores, which they can change the color of at will to signify to different members of its species of its presence in the dark vacuum of space. It's unknown what these color flashes mean, but people enjoy gathering on beaches on warm summer nights to watch this brilliant display of color and light. Unlike Mightior's variations of colors, this Pokemon would have one singular rainbow-formed shiny, which would spawn at a higher rate than most other shiny Pokemon, since it is pretty common for Mightior to display these flashes of colors. So I feel like it's a central part of its origin. Mightior would also boast a signature move, Meteor Shower. This would be a flying-type non-damaging move, in which the user shows the target a beautiful meteor shower, sharply raising Mightior's strongest stat. Finally, to reference this Pokemon's inspirations, Mightior would evolve into Mightior when leveled up under a meteor shower. Perhaps in a future game this would be a weather phenomenon in certain regions, similar to hail, rain, or harsh sunlight. Now, let's go deep in the jungle, where you'll find far more than just grass-type Pokemon. Perhaps you'll even find Koabash, this evolution to a lowland Marowak given to us by the Corvid. This Pokemon is an incredible iteration on what I believe is one of the most popular regional forms of all time, so kudos to the artist for that. This Pokemon overtly seems to be based on the myth of the Hawaiian Night Marchers, a true warrior now, embellishing a sword for combat and bony armor covering its body. Given how cool this design is, not much needs to be improved per se, it's just a matter of toning it down in a sense to match the sensibilities of Pokemon. I did that with my design, which rounds out a lot of the spiky and cracked edges and removes a lot of unnecessary detail. One lesson to learn from Pokemon design is that having repeated details like this sometimes isn't necessary, as long as you can cue the viewer in on what they're looking at in more broad, cartoonish ways. I hope I did that with the overall colors and shapes of the sword and the armor. Koabash gather in the night and march across the mountains, beaches, and remote villages of their home region. Their somber yet beautiful glows help guide lost Pokemon to the afterlife. Beware the sounds of their march, a low symphonic hum produced by the holes and ridges in their worn skull helmets. Getting in the way of a Koabash procession will bring great misfortune to any trainer who tries it, as they inexplicably disappear at night, or they're inflicted with incurable illnesses or madness. Koabash collects any bones that they find during the march, using them to build and fortify their armor, which they drum on with their intricately carved clubs. These clubs are ground time and time again against lava rocks to ensure that they're both wickedly jagged and sharp, curved exactly to the grip of Koabash for ultimate precision in their fighting technique. They use these rocks to light a spark that consumes the blade, which is said to be tied directly to the ghostly fire on their tails, and never goes out as long as Koabash maintains the spirit of a true warrior. Koabash would have a slightly monochromatic design for its shiny, with a ghostly white fire contrasting against the lava rock black and gray scales and body patterns, plus at the request of the artist, glowing red eyes, which was certainly a great touch. Lastly, to represent the importance of its bladed club, Alolan Marowak would evolve into Koabash when using the signature move, Shadow Bone, at night, 15 times in a row, similar to many Hisuian evolutions in their combat mechanic-oriented evolution methods. Next up, let's meet perhaps the most summer Pokemon that you could possibly make. Here's Lancerin's Solstil, an evolution to Stonejourner aptly based on the summer solstice. This is absolutely genius for a Stonehenge Pokemon, since Stonehenge is aligned towards the sunrise on the summer solstice, making it one of the first recorded instances of our observance of the summer season, which is pretty remarkable. So I made sure my redesign of Solstil was as regal and wise as can be for such a fundamental representative of our seasonal celebration today. I expanded it slightly to include several other stones on both sides, giving it an endearing sense of asymmetry and relative size increase over Stonejourner, rather than just being an arch. It's the whole monument. I imagine it also tends to stay quite still and uses its psychic powers, so its limbs are gone in favor of overgrown moss and what used to be its legs. I also made a clearly defined sun carving in the two main stones, the ultimate way to represent the observation of the solstice by ancient residents of the Pokemon world. For the most part, this was just labor intensive in terms of getting the details and the complexity right, which is really hard given the amount of moss that I needed to include and the ruggedness of the rocks. Pokemon design definitely needs a degree of simplicity, like I said, so even designs like this have to have some concessions here and there to just infer a sense of age and wear and tear, rather than include every single instance of them. Hence, not all too much moss in the body, and relatively similar shapes for all the rocks. The wisest and most patient of Stonejourner that coalesce together under a starry night can fuse together as one, using their collective knowledge of the world from their time wandering, to finally remain still and form a divine connection to the stars above. Solstil prefers to stand still in open grass fields, choosing only to relocate if the conditions of its environment aren't conducive to its meditative lifestyle. It is possible to decipher how long a Solstil has stood for by examining the amount of moss that has grown on its pillars. It's said the oldest of Solstil have remained standing for nearly 5,000 years, far longer than the recorded history of the Pokemon world. Scientists have concluded that the sun markings on its main pillars correspond correctly to the summer solstice. On the morning of the solstice, Solstil orient themselves towards the rising sun, and the first rays reflect upon them, enhancing their psychic powers to extreme levels. Much mystery surrounds these Pokemon and why they remain devoted to meditating, and whether their reflections will be used to help other Pokemon or humankind. This Pokemon's shiny pays homage to Stonejourner with a darker hue on all of its main rocks, while its moss covering becomes white, a way to hint towards the winter solstice due to its resemblance of snow. Solstil would boast a signature ability as well, Solar Alignment. This would boost special attack and defense in sunny weather by 2 stages, referencing their keen observance of the sunniest day of the year and the powers that they gain from it. Finally, to reference this Pokemon's wisdom, age, and nearly mythical status, Stonejourner evolves into Solstil when using a Sunstone in a special location depending on the game. For example, the Altar of the Sun, the Bell Tower Summit, or the Turffield Geoglyph. However, you need 2 Stonejourner in the party. The Pokemon will essentially fuse and become one, with the new Solstil taking on the stats and other details from the higher leveled Stonejourner, regardless of which one you actually use the Sunstone on. And with that, we have gone through each and every submission that I had time to get to, of course. As much as I might have wanted to, not every submission was redesigned. Remember that a video like this is meant to illustrate what I've learned as a Fakemon designer, and how I can apply that to make your designs better if I feel like it needs some improvements to reach its fullest potential. So some designs were omitted for the good reason that they're already fantastic, and I had little to nothing to add to the design. Others were a matter of artist block, since I just couldn't find a satisfying direction to no fault of the design, and some were just a matter of time. This was once again a very successful challenge in terms of turnout, by far the best in terms of volume and quality of submissions, so I really couldn't be happier. Here are all of these submissions that didn't get a redesign. Hopefully I can provide some honest feedback so you can run with your own designs and make them even better, if they need any improvement at all, that is. Leon's Machark is a hilariously buff evolution to Machoke, and a literal land shark, and I love this pixel artwork. It's shaded beautifully and would fit right into generations 4 or 5, nearly flawless. The only thing I would have done is make it look a bit less like a regional variant of Machamp, and more like an original split evolution, maybe by making the face more shark-like, or returning to the reptilian roots of Machoke. I'd also try experimenting with giving it a bit more color, but it's otherwise pretty entertaining as it is. What about another bodybuilder? Shout out to Seanock for yet another great MS Paint style inclusion with Clunk, with an absolutely jacked evolution to Clang. I truly think both the name and the concept are on point. It's just the right amount of silliness that I can genuinely see in the franchise nowadays. I tried pretty hard to get this one to work in a more Pokemon style, but turning all those gears into a discernibly humanoid form without it being too complicated was really hard. However, I know it can be done, so someone please go wild with the fan art. I'll be patiently waiting in the Discord. Under the sea, we can find Coralith from Churro T Nerd. This Pokemon is a clever coral reef evolution to Boldore that looks more crab-like than Carcinization, baby! I love the design, and between the colors, claws, and concept, it feels nearly flawless. The artist even included a second variant, being a dark and light sea version. That's pretty much the only thing that I would have taken further, keeping this pretty perfect base design but changing up the coral details, color, and adding a few small swimming Pokemon alongside this Pokemon to denote both its size and regional variations. Perhaps a tropical sea version would have lighter colors and Corsola, Bruxish, and Wishiwashi swimming alongside it, whereas a cold sea version would be a lot darker, or icy colored, and would include an Arrokuda or a Shelder. Here's Blastfern from Threat to Swine, a thunderstorm chasing evolution to Noivern, which truly elevates this line to epic pseudo-legendary proportions. I honestly think this design is flawless, and I didn't have anything to add. The colors, sharp elements, and detail are all right there. The only thing I would have done is making the wings a bit larger, like a wyvern, and redrawing it as is in a digital rendering, maybe in a flying pose? I don't know. I mean, improvements at the margins are always possible, but this is a really solid design. How about another nearly flawless thunderstorm design? Here's Altafar from Bloody 359, a beautiful evolution to Altaria, an absolutely regal Pokemon with those awesome lightning bolts trapped within its massive wings. It really makes sense that the Altaria line now feels more menacing with this. The pose, proportions, shading, and sensibilities when it comes to the level of detail do honestly feel extremely close to my own art style, so I didn't really have anything to add, hence why I didn't pick this one. Maybe besides a little more detail on the head, so it looks like a true evolution to Altaria rather than like a mega evolution. Otherwise, you've got a really killer design here. From Sassafrassinid, here's Driftkite, an adorable evolution for Drifloon. This is yet another design that I feel like is pretty great as is. I couldn't really think of anything that I'd want to change. This is a kite Pokemon with a clearly illustrated concept, and it just works. I only wonder what the colors would be to differentiate it from Drifloon, because it keeps a lot of the same details and of course the same typing. Our last aerial Pokemon here comes from Balea with Flamafly, a split evolution from Metapod. I think this one has the most room for improvement here, and potential. The artist says its wings are inflatable, in reference to plastic pool floaties, perhaps containing some kind of gas or fire to keep it raised in the air. I just struggled a lot trying to draw this translucent material and conveying the concept within the inflatable elements, so it properly looked like a believable wild Pokemon. but I do believe this one can be done as well. I'd love to take a stab at it in the future. This is perhaps the most clever Soroboruo from Octopatty. This is the word Ouroboros backwards, or the myth of the snake that swallows its own tail, reimagining this myth as a fun-loving circus hoop and an evolution to Ekans, hence the backwards name. I think just like Machark, this pixel art here is really well done, and I had no minor details to improve, except maybe the pose to show it gracefully tucking its tail into its mouth, to assume the actual concept. Originally, due to the airtight simple design of the space form, I was playing around with giving this Pokemon a school form in a sense, to reference the artist's envisioning of these Pokemon linking up into hoop chains. I was thinking maybe a circus cannon, or a set of gym rings, or a trampoline, but nothing really came of my first sketch, so I kinda scrapped it. Another instance in which I think a fresh set of eyes could do something really cool here. Another cool pixel art submission comes to us from Dayton with Ascended Wing, an evolution to the Paradox Pokemon Slitherwing. It almost looks like it turns back into Volcarona, which is pretty neat. It's meant to be some sort of sun god embodiment, and I love the lore the artist provided. I really just wish I could have had time for this one, since there's not really one clear area that needs improvement, but rather tons of possible avenues that you could do as you redraw this Pokemon in a non-pixelated art style. Personally, I would have just played up the almost metallic wings and rings, making them more glowy and more akin to Arceus's rings, to show how this Pokemon has some sort of divine connection. I would have also kept the body plan of Volcarona, but I would have removed the individual elements that are just copy-pasted, if that makes sense. For example, I would give a new shape to the eyes, and to those dark red antenna sort of things on the side of its head. Otherwise, a truly inventive submission. This Pokemon is neat as well, the endearing Calopical from Escondida 17. This is a large Brontosaurus-like evolution to Tropius, that ditches the flying abilities in lieu of a chunky and terrestrial body, where it prefers to eat berries that grow on its own tail. I love this rich concept, and this was originally a design that I was working on, but I just couldn't figure it out. It would have been really cool to play up this Pokemon's size, perhaps making it one of the largest terrestrial Pokemon ever, if not the largest, like the Argentinosaurus. And maybe giving some much needed texture to it, to show which parts of its body are clearly botanical fruits or berries, and which are leafy wings or a thick coconut-like body. I would have also probably changed up the colors to be darker, and thus more tropical looking, just for some healthy variation of Tropius. If you've seen Subjectively's awesome evolution for Tropius from their region, then you know what I'm talking about. And last but certainly not least, we finally arrive at our last cosmic Pokemon, and last submission, Solflaria from Moonlight Dragonbloom. This Pokemon is an evolution to Solrock and kinda does the same thing as the last submission, in taking a previously encased cosmic body and bursting it outwards, with some kind of heat and energy, this time fiery solar rays. I think you're on the right track here, but the crucial thing would be to make this Pokemon have a different body type, perhaps not simply a sphere, kind of like what I did with Mightior. If you want this Pokemon to be an evolution of Solrock, because it almost looks less complex than the Pokemon that it's supposed to evolve from as it stands. But if this were to be repurposed as like a regional form, it's rock solid. I also would have loved to see these rocky floaty bits remain as rocks, a tad more spaced out from the main body, but with maybe some kind of solar flare plasm holding them all together, kind of like Reuniclus. That way there's more elements besides just glowy rocks, and it would really play up the fire typing and sun origin. And with that, we did it. 11 redesigns, 11 honorable mentions, and a whole lot of summer celebration along the way. Hopefully your design got a satisfying redesign, or some feedback on how to take it to the next level, if it wasn't there already. And if you didn't submit, hopefully you got to revel in elements that make the summer season special to you, whether that's the memory of a great vacation, the joy of surfing, a delicious ice cream, maybe just soaking up the rays in good company. This was by far the most successful redesign challenge in terms of amazing submissions and satisfying art on my end. So thank you to everyone for banding together all summer and contributing to a truly special video. I'm always going to cherish the memories of putting this one together. If you want to submit for any future challenges, please make sure to join the Tam Valley Discord, since we'll be kicking off the Autumn Challenge in just a few weeks, around late August. Thank you to my guardian patron, Dayton Wheezy, for deciding the sub-theme for this challenge, Direct Evolutions. We'll be right back in August with yet another theme to go along with the autumn requisite, so stay tuned for our 5th consecutive seasonal art challenge. Of course, before we send off summer in style, let's take a look at a certain group photo.